I was very relieved to see Winston Peters. For those in America, he's our Deputy Prime Minister. But at least he was one of the few people in New Zealand who doesn't seem to be totally enamoured with Barack Obama and can't see why New Zealand has to fit the bill of Barack coming for a state visit. And why would he? You know, why would he want to use one of our planes? That's the question I want to ask. It brought me to a dream I had a couple of years ago, in that I was on the back doorstep and Barack Obama was there on my back doorstep, and to the right of me were stickers on the window pane, and they were, you know, I knew that the stickers were significant, although I had no idea what the meaning of them was, and I tried to think of what they were called. In my day, when I grew up, we used to put stickers on everything, and then I finally found the word was transfers, and when I found that word, realised that was the word, I realised that was the word that the dream was sort of pointing me to, but I still didn't know what the significance was until this morning when I watched a video by Carl Gallups. And in it, he's talking about the executive order that Trump passed in December to confiscate all monies, all property of people involved in certain activities, whether they be in the government or whatever. So obviously he was preparing for the time that these indictments are going to come. And if you haven't heard about and then those people are not going to have any way of escaping, because they have access to huge wealth. And if it's not George Soros, who should be on the top of that list, you know, who's been funding Black Lives Matter, who's funded the opposition to Brexit and to every evil progressive, you know, all the riots, all the upheavals in America, you know. So, but he's just one of them, and there's a whole list. And Trump opened that list on Friday, but to make sure that we knew, and that that Trump knew that the New World Order is still in control, they crashed the stock market, and with the signature percentage of 666, just to say, hey, we're in charge, buddy, and don't you forget it. So, but of course, you know, most of the sheeple just passes them by, just as the three so-called false alarms and the missiles in Hawaii and Japan the following day, and there was one other one about a few weeks before that. And we sit there, you know, our news media just ran it again last week, you know, talking about this sap that, you know, has fessed up to it, and, you know, why he did it and whatever. And it's just a whole lot of crap, you know, when it takes 5 levels and, you know, multiple people to press that button. There's just no way that that can be done by accident, and that is well documented on the internet. You can just look it up. Many people have done videos on it. And in America, of course, they are waking up, and just as I've seen on Alex Jones now, the American people are asking for the indictment of Barack Obama and Hillary and all the rest of them. But in New Zealand, we are so cloistered, we are so under the control of this Masonic network that, you know, we're just like an isolated bubble. And my concern with that dream that I had, after I have seen the news item in New Zealand on 2 consecutive nights, where John Key, our ex-Prime Minister, who was responsible for doing John Kerry and Obama's dirty work on the day that Trump got elected, and he went and he put forward the United Nations resolution that Israel should return to their 1967 pre-1967 borders, and that was just before he made a very hasty resignation and exited stage right. But as you can always so see on our election night, there he was with all his family and his fanfare, taking the the stage for the triumphal entry, as if the election success had anything to do with him. And as it turned out, it wasn't a success anyway. Bill English didn't get to be Prime Minister, so they weren't able to continue their power. And thankfully, we have somebody like Winston Peters who does know what's going on. So hopefully he can guide Jacinda in the right direction, away from her leftist leanings and her hero Helen Clark. So where am I? So yeah, the three, I just wanted to talk about what else happened. John Key is just there forefront every time. And as he was in Hawaii on the day that, all these people were absolutely petrified for 45 minutes, but it was reported that John Key miraculously in the hotel there with his family and wasn't overly concerned because the hotel staff was so good. Well, okay, I read that as what a load of crap, first of all, but what is he doing in a hotel at 8 o'clock in the morning when he has his own home there? And, obviously, if he wasn't concerned, unlike the people people that we know who were actually, emptying their freezers to put their children in, they were so petrified, and you saw them being thrown down manholes. The people in it were absolutely, it was unbelievable for 45 minutes. And so either he had the inside knowledge, which of course he did, either it was, and many are saying that it was actually an attack, and as was Japan, and that they were thwarted. But there's the other side that says, no, this was just false flag, which is, the deep state trying out these plans. So Obama was probably there with John Key in the hotel, there to watch the what the sheeples do, the reaction of the people, how they panic. So, that's a horrible thing to think, but John Key's, turning out to be a pretty horrible person, and if he's able to sell his own homeland, the Jews, the way he did for John Kerry and Obama, he's just up to it. I've done other videos of him when he visited the Queen. Him and his family went there for a weekend, and it's obvious that he's, and especially now with his position and that dream that I had of him being given a position, he was wearing the leopard skin shirt, which of course symbolises the leopard, the Antichrist system, and he was given the best shirt, and he was on the stage about to teach the children of the world a new way, and that was before he got the job. I dreamt it 2 weeks before he got the job at the ANZ, so when he got the job at the ANZ, I thought, aha, that's what that is. And then about 2 weeks after that, I saw him on my Facebook advocating Bitcoin, and then I thought, so that's what it is, and that's him teaching the world this great new monetary system. And so he's obviously right up there, and the Bitcoin, I believe, is the Antichrist system that they're going to put in after they crash the American dollar, which is obviously very close. So hopefully anything else, I was just going to show you this. If you don't know about Barack Obama and you don't know what the files were, the FISA files that the FISA court that Trump released on Friday, despite all the wrangling of those, even on his own side, not to release them because it would jeopardize national security and other excuses, but he did, and that's why we had that crash. So it is all coming down, and the reason I believe that I had that dream is that this is a backup plan, that either Obama is looking at New Zealand as an escape route, or that because he's got his own planes, he's made sure that he's got US funded travel for many, many years to come, and he's been using it diligently all around the world to shadow Donald Trump. and that's what he's doing here now. He's just keeping on the stage so that when they overthrow or assassinate or whatever they're going to do to Donald Trump, you know, he's right there and everyone's going to say, our saviour, our saviour. But also I'd like to say on this, if you don't believe in the Antichrist, this guy Carl Gallups does an excellent video breaking down Barack Obama and the requirements of the Antichrist, and showing that he fits every one of them, even his name Barack. You know, Jesus said, I saw Satan fall as the lightning from heaven, and Barack means lightning. So, but he just takes everyone down and shows how he fills them perfectly. So you can find that on PNN News. So here, I'm just going to show you Joel Gilbert and what Carl says. Okay, so I'll just leave it with them and hope that you do sort of start looking at the world and not through the lens that you've been shown on our New Zealand television.
On the country. So first time on InfoWars, we'll be talking to him for quite a while at the bottom of the hour.
You know, we're getting all of this exposed right now about what Obama did, the collusion with the FBI, the DOJ, how he wanted to know everything that was going on in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. I believe that's because he was involved in that. He knew that she had the server. Who knows what he knew about it, but I think he was also emailing things to that server. And so I think he's trying to protect his own hide in this. But so we're kind of getting this more into the public atmosphere, if you will, about how corrupt Obama was, about how big of a fraud he was, and then also about how criminal and treasonous he was. But you did the film Dreams of My Real Father, documenting Obama's real upbringing, his real life. Do you think that the American people ever get that deep into the truth about Obama? Do you think it ever goes there?
It goes there. It takes a long time. When my first film came out, Dreams of My Real Father, 2012, people would say, well, this can't be true.
This is Joel Gilbert.
Or Fox certainly would have covered it, that he's not who he says he is. The film walked you through the fact that his real father was not the Kenyan Obama, the man he based his entire political career on, but his father was a Soviet agent and pro-Russia communist propagandist named Frank Marshall Davis that raised him and radicalized him in Hawaii. So as the years go by, since then it's been about 5 years, people are much more knowledgeable how the media has been covering for Obama and how corrupt
Not
he
in
really
New Zealand,
is.
unfortunately.
And finally we're getting a lot of the real proof that Obama is a radical. He's was someone who was in the little-known world of American Marxism from his childhood and all the way back to Chicago, where his real father, Frank Marshall Davis, was one of the original black Bolsheviks, the blacks who were recruited by white communists to try to get black people to come into the movement. So people are learning more and more. I think the public gets it now. And that's why there's a real chance to really expose Obama and the entire network of Chicago Marxist radicals for what they really are.
Yeah, keep that.
And that's what they are promoting now in this new film, Black Panther, which they are doing a fundraising drive to ensure that every black child who couldn't afford to go is able to go to see this film, because it portrays blacks in a favourable position where, you know, and gives them a role model to look up to. But the actual whole Black Panther is a movement that you can look up, a radical socialist movement in the 60s. Van Jones, who is now pushing the move on, .org is behind all these social policy, these marches that are all, they have the face of righteousness. They have the face of goodness. They're, you know, against racial prejudice and sexual prejudice or anything like that. And it's just all about bringing acceptance of everyone into the world, but in actual fact it is very devious. And as Margaret MacDonald prophesied, you know, the cry of liberty, which is the cry of freedom, which they are advocating freedom for all, the cry of liberty was nothing more than the hiss of the serpent. And that's exactly Satan's plan, is to under the guise of social justice, he is, you know, getting rid of any trace of Christianity or any trace of free speech, of moral regulations or anything that we believe. So Yeah, that's that. And okay, I'll just also now just show you, because if you're in New Zealand you probably don't know, and but this man is very forefront, and many. He's a pastor and he was a policeman, an investigator, and he was behind the Joe Arpaio investigation, which that man was actually put in prison, you know, because he was the one who was responsible to finding the truth that that Obama's birth certificate was an absolute fraud. So, yeah.
The National Emergencies Act, that's U.S. Code 1601. The
This is Carl
NEA,
Gallups.
the Global Magnitsky
I'll leave the links
Human
to all
Rights
these.
Accountability Act. That's Public Law 114-328.
I'll push this along a little bit, I
Section
think.
12F, etc. And then of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, which is U.S. Code number 8, 1182, and Section 301 titled United States Code. So in other words, this executive order, President Trump says, is based upon the authority granted to the office of President of the United States through all of these various laws and acts and orders and etc. Okay? So then he says, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that the prevalence and severity of human rights abuse and corruption that have their source in whole or in substantial part outside the United States. Now, when you first start reading it, you think, oh, this is dealing with people outside of the United States who are messing with us. Well, surely it is. As a matter of fact, he lists a bunch of those people and nations by name. I'm guessing about a dozen. At the end of this executive order, he calls it the annex. At the annex, and then I don't want to bore you with going through all of these names, but I'll give you some of the main players, some of the main countries involved. So he says this is directed at people who are violating human rights and involved in serious corruption in whole or in substantial part outside the United States, such as those committed or directed by persons listed in the annex, all right, that's the people at the bottom, who have reached such scope and gravity that they threaten the stability of international political economic systems, human rights abuse, corruption, undermine the values that form the essential foundation of stable, secure societies, etc., etc. And then he goes on to describe that and how dangerous it is. And he says the United States seeks to impose tangible and significant consequences. Oops, the page jumped. Hold on, right when I was reading it. I know your internet does that sometimes. Here we go. All right, here we are. Tangible, significant consequences on those who commit serious human rights abuse or engage in corruption, as well as to protect the financial system of the United States from abuse by these same persons. All right, so that sounds like a very reasonable, and by the way, I'm telling you right now, I like this executive order, and I like where I think it's going, by my opinion. And the opinions of others who are much more intelligent than I am, especially in this area, and who have contacts inside Washington, D.C., and even at least some very powerful indirect contacts inside the White House. They also hold a very similar opinion that I do about what this really kind of is about. Okay, so let me keep reading. It says, I, therefore, that's Donald J. Trump, determine that serious human rights abuse and corruption around the world constitute an unusual, extraordinary threat to national security, foreign policy, and the economy of the United States, and I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. I hereby determine and order. Now, here's what you want to listen to, folks. Section 1, paragraph A. All property. How much is all? Everything. I guess underwear out of your underwear drawer. I'm not sure. All property and interest in property that are in the United States that hereafter come within the United States or that are or hereafter come within the possession or control of any United States person. Of the following persons, and that's in the annex, are blocked and may not be transferred, paid, exported, withdrawn, or otherwise dealt in. All right, then it says the persons listed in this annex to this order, any foreign person determined by the Secretary of Treasury and consult with the Secretary of State and Attorney General, to be responsible for, complicit in, or have direct or indirectly engaged in serious human rights abuse, etc., etc. Now, hold on, folks. I'm getting to the punchline here in a moment, okay? But I just have to set this up, because if I just read the punchline to you, you're going to say, well, what was the context? Okay, so I'm setting the context right now. And I know that might be a little boring with all this legalese, but then I'm going to kind of translate some of it for you, at least in my opinion, and then the opinion of others. But then it goes on to say that this is pursuant to, related to, current or former government officials, and the context there seems to be U.S. government officials, or a person acting for on behalf of such an official, who is responsible for or complicit in, or who has directly or indirectly engaged in, listen to this, corruption, including the misappropriation of state assets, the expropriation of private assets for personal gain, corruption related to government contracts, or the extraction of natural resources, like uranium and Clinton Foundation money and Fusion GPS, anyway, let me keep reading, or bribery, or the transfer or the facilitation of the transfer of the proceeds of corruption. And then it goes on to talk about collusion and cooperation with foreign governments and officials in these kinds of activities.
So you've got the idea, and if you don't know what the he's talking about, the Clinton Foundation, that's all the money that was raised to go to the children of Haiti, or the survivors there, and it all went to the Clintons. So, yeah, thankfully Winston Peters does seem to be on the ball. Hopefully, you're going to start looking into these things, realise, that President Trump has just been totally defamed in every which way by our news media. He was the only one, he actually was the first one he started that investigation onto the birth certificate. He knows the biggest fraud in human history has been played on not only America but the world, and that is in the form of Barack Obama, who has no birth certificate, and the actual one is a forgery, and the woman who was responsible for that birth certificate, Fuddy, her name was killed very suspiciously in an air accident, and it just goes on and on and on. Just look it up. Stop believing the lies. Take off the blinkers, and hopefully that you'll end up on the side of Jesus Christ, that you will be awakened from your sleeper. The Lord says, "Awake, O sleepers," because there isn't much time left. So anyway, thanks for listening, and please watch John Key. He's not our friend. And as for Obama, he is the Antichrist, and he's waiting for his chance to come back. And you and everybody who worships him are just giving him that position that he's waiting for as King of the world, or Antichrist.